Thank you. Can I ask those members who are leaving the chamber to please do so quickly and quietly, as we will now move on to the final item of business. And the final item of business is a members' business debate on motion 20319 in the name of Elena Whittam on Eating Disorders Awareness Week 2026. This debate will be concluded without any questions being put, and I would invite those members who would wish to speak in the debate to please press the request to speak buttons, and I call on Elena Whittam to open the debate. Up to 7 minutes, please.
Presiding Officer, I am pleased to bring this debate to the Chamber today, recognising Eating Disorders Awareness Week 2026, which runs from the 23rd of February to the 1st of March. And I thank members from across the Chamber for adding their voices to this issue and to BEAT for providing briefings. And I welcome representatives from BEAT and supported to the gallery, as well as David, a father who lost his beloved daughter just last year. And I pay tribute to them for bearing with us as our decision time crept to ever later this evening. This year's theme is community, and that theme could not be more important. Eating disorders are profoundly isolating illnesses. They isolate the person who is struggling, they isolate the parents and carers who are frightened and unsure of where to turn, they isolate families who often feel they are navigating a complex and fragmented system alone. But community, connection, shared understanding, peer support can be absolute lifelines. We know that eating disorders affect at least 1.25 million people across the UK, including around 100,000 people here in Scotland. And we also know that prevalence and complexity appear to have increased since the COVID-19 pandemic. But behind those numbers are real lives. Anorexia, bulimia, binge eating disorder, ARFID. And it is ARFID, avoidant restrictive food intake disorder, that I want to speak about personally today. In my own family, we have experienced the reality of ARFID, and I want to be honest about what that has meant. And I have spoken about it before, but it bears repeating. It did not look like what many people imagine an eating disorder to be. There was no discussion about body image, no desire to lose weight. Instead, there was an overwhelming anxiety around food, the texture, the smell, the appearance, fear that others might dismiss as fussiness. Meals became battlegrounds. Social occasions became stressful, or actually non-existent because it was just too traumatic. And nutrition became an urgent daily concern for all of us. And Presiding Officer, when we sought help, we encountered what so many families tell us they experience, and that's uncertainty. Uncertainty about who was responsible for treatment, uncertainty about whether this was serious enough, uncertainty about what pathway even existed. We met dedicated professionals who wanted to help, and I want to acknowledge that, but we also encountered gaps, a lack of consistent understanding, long waits, no clear agreed pathway. And that experience is not unique. Through helplines and community organisations, we continue to hear that services can be hard to access, late to intervene, and too often driven by crisis management rather than early support. Some people receive excellent care from GPs and primary care teams, but there remains significant geographical variation with support dependent sometimes on where you live. Families describe struggling to get recognition for binge eating disorder. Young people with ARFID are being told that they don't fit traditional criteria. People wait months and sometimes years for specialist input. Meanwhile, presentations are becoming ever more complex. People are navigating eating disorders alongside neurodivergence, trauma, substance use, depression and anxiety. Social media is shaping how young people are thinking about food and body image. The increasing availability of GLP-1 weight loss injections is also adding another layer to a fast-changing landscape. This isn't a static challenge, it's ever evolving. It is important to recognise, however, that Scotland has much to be proud of in terms of its policy direction. The 2021 National Review of Eating Disorder Services set out comprehensive, thoughtful recommendations. The 2024 National Specification provides a clear framework for improvement. And through the National Eating Disorders Network, work is being done to improve training via TURAS, NHS Inform and NHS 24. Health boards have been asked to audit themselves and plan for implementation. This is all good work and it deserves recognition. But the reality we continue to hear from people with lived experience is that the ambition has not yet translated into consistent change on the ground everywhere. A strategy is only as strong as its delivery, and collectively we must strive harder, and that's something I know that we all want to do. Clinical teams are being asked to implement significant transformation within existing structures and ever-tightening budgets. Waiting times targets and expectations around self-referral require capacity, and the national network itself operates with very limited staffing. So we cannot assume that publishing a review means that the problem is solved. We cannot assume that because structures exist, the experience of families have improved everywhere. And this brings me back to the theme of community. Community means peer support, which amazing organisations like BEAT are expanding right across the country. It means training teachers so that schools can identify concerns early. It means equipping GPs with the confidence to recognise ARFID and binge eating disorder. It means supporting carers who often shoulder enormous emotional and practical burdens. I can't put a number on the amount of time I spent in tears over the years. But community also means political will. The national specification was designed as a 10-year transformation, yet current structures are only secured until the end of this parliamentary term. Eating disorders transcend political timeframes. They are serious mental illnesses with among the highest mortality rate of any psychiatric conditions. Sustained change requires sustained commitment beyond electoral cycles. If we are serious about early intervention, we must invest in it. If we are serious about parity between mental and physical health, we must demonstrate it. If we are serious about reducing geographical inequality, we must measure and address it. And if we are serious about community, we must listen to lived experience. When families say they feel dismissed, we must respond. When young people are saying they're waiting too long, we need to act. When clinicians say that they need clearer pathways, we must provide them. Because no parent should sit at a kitchen table in tears wondering how to get help for their child. No young person should feel their illness is not the right kind to qualify for support. And no family should feel alone as we did. And certainly no family should lose their child, as David in the gallery did. Eating Disorders Awareness Week gives us an opportunity to talk openly, to reduce stigma, to share stories, to build connection, but awareness must be matched by action. Let this week not only recognise the scale of the challenge, but renew our commitment to addressing it fully, consistently and compassionately. And I know that the Minister will set that out because I recognise the work that the Government is doing in this space. For the 100,000 people in Scotland living with an eating disorder, for their families and for the communities that surround them, we need to come together in this issue. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms Whittam. We now move to the open debate. Backbench speeches of up to 4 minutes. I call Emma Harper to be followed by Maurice Golden. Ms Harper.
Thank you, Presiding Officer. I welcome the opportunity to speak in recognition of Eating Disorders Awareness Week 2026, and I thank Eleanor Whittam for leading this important debate. I've led the debate myself in the past, and I've spoken almost every year as an MSP in this place almost for the last 10 years. And as a nurse and someone with a family member who's living with what I suspect is undiagnosed ARFID, these issues are not abstract to me. They are lived, felt and witnessed every day. And I want to pay tribute to our former colleague Dennis Robertson, whose daughter Caroline tragically died from an eating disorder. Dennis's courage in sharing that loss transformed how this Parliament understands these conditions. We honour that legacy today. Presiding Officer, eating disorders affect at least 100,000 people in Scotland, with many thousands more impacted as carers, friends and families. And the Eating Disorder Charity BEAT's briefing makes clear that while prevalence has increased, recovery is possible, especially when people receive early and sustained support. And I too welcome Alex Jones from BEAT and David to the Chamber Gallery this evening also. I've worked with Alex quite a lot actually in the last few years. This year's theme is about community. It could not be more fitting. Eating disorders thrive on isolation, Presiding Officer. They pull people away from routines, relationships and support networks. Carers too can feel overwhelmed or unsure how best to help, but connection can break through that isolation and encourage people to seek help sooner. And I want to thank BEAT and Alex Jones, who is the national lead for Scotland for BEAT, for all the work in Scotland. Their compassionate advisers and clear information provide hope for so many. BEAT's website could be, and already is, the first place for many to turn to when they are frightened or unsure, or helping folks understand what is happening before symptoms escalate into crisis. It's free and accessible for people in crisis, and it's also available 24/7. The presence of BEAT in Scotland is stronger thanks to the previous Scottish Government investment, including an additional £500,000 provided in 2021. This is funding that effectively reaches more people. BEAT's briefing outlines several clear and constructive asks. Important next steps on a journey Scotland is committed to. Continued implementation of the 2021 National Review and the 2024 National Specification remains essential. These frameworks, developed with clinicians, people with lived experience and the Scottish Government, set a strong foundation. Scotland leads the UK in this work, but momentum must be sustained to ensure ambition becomes consistent practice and that progress continues into the next Parliament. Equitable access to community and day treatment options across the all health boards is crucial. These approaches can match inpatient outcomes while keeping people close to home and reducing pressure on hospital beds. But provision varies widely. BEAT calls for targeted investments so every area, including rural regions such as Dumfries and Galloway and the borders, can access effective person-centred services. A renewed approach to mental health investment is vital. Demand has risen sharply since the pandemic, and BEAT highlights the need for long-term funding to reflect this. Early intervention is where outcomes are strongest, but it requires stable, sustained resources. We must protect people from unintended harm caused by mandatory calorie labelling. Research shows that calorie counts can be distressing for many in recovery. Future policy decisions should ensure calorie information is available in ways that safeguard those at risk, for example through opt-in rather than automatic display. Presiding Officer, BEAT also raises valid concerns about online harms, and that's really important, including pro-eating disorder content and the risks that are associated linked to AI. They call for stronger protections and robust signposting to support. These points deserve consideration as part of our wider digital safety agenda. Conscious of the time, Presiding Officer, and colleagues have been here a long time today already. So for anyone who is listening today who is struggling, you're not alone. BEAT is here, your community is here, and recovery is possible. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms Harper. I call Maurice Golden to be followed by Cara Mulligan. Mr Golden.
Thank you, Deputy Presiding Officer, and I'm pleased to speak in support of this motion recognising Eating Disorders Awareness Week 2026. As I have done in previous years, and I thank Elena Whittam for securing the debate. I also want to associate myself with the powerful contributions of both Elena Whittam and Emma Harper. It's an important reminder of why these debates matter so much. This year's theme, community, is particularly important. Eating disorders can be profoundly isolating for those experiencing them and for their families and carers. Building supportive connections, peers, professionals, community groups can make a huge difference in recovery. The scale of the challenge we face in Scotland is sobering. Recent data from the Scottish Health Survey 2024 revealed that around 26% of people aged 16 to 24 reported eating behaviours and feelings related to food that could be indicative of possible eating disorders, far higher than in older age groups. This mirrors reporting that more than a quarter of young Scots may have symptoms suggesting an eating disorder, with significant impacts on work, education and social life. These findings echo concerns about rising prevalence since the pandemic and underline the urgency of awareness and early intervention. I want to put on record my thanks for the extraordinary work of BEAT Eating Disorders. BEAT's helplines, peer support groups and campaigns continue to provide essential help for people suffering from eating disorders, not the least of which is giving people the opportunity to connect and share experiences. However, those services are only part of the picture. We now know that the National Review of Eating Disorder Services set out comprehensive recommendations to improve access and quality of care. The Scottish Government has rightly accepted those recommendations and established a national network to coordinate delivery. But we need to see investment and accountability delivering the recommendations sustained over the long term. Because we know this is not a problem that will disappear anytime soon. Large numbers of young people continue to be referred to child and adolescent mental health services. The waiting times they face illustrate the scale of demand put on the system. For NHS Tayside, there is only one facility, Duddup Young People's Unit, which admits an average of 20 young people per year, and no data is held for adult patients. These aspects desperately need addressed. Community matters here because it's not just about clinical care, it's about creating supportive environments where people feel understood, where early signs don't go unnoticed or unspoken, and where friends and family know where and how to seek help. Deputy Presiding Officer, awareness campaigns have an important place, but we must back them up with action, investment in treatment services, workforce development, research and evidence-led public education. We must ensure that no young person in Scotland feels alone in the struggle and that their communities and schools, workplaces and families are empowered to support them. So I urge ministers to listen carefully to the debate to outline how the Scottish Government will strengthen both specialist services and community support so that we can turn the promise of this Awareness Week into lasting progress for everyone affected by eating disorders.
Thank you, Mr Golden. I call Carol Mochan to be followed by Kevin Stewart. Ms Mochan.
Thank you, Presiding Officer. Can I also thank Eleanor Witham for bringing this important debate to the Chamber? And can I also welcome the guests to the gallery and really thank parents like David for pushing us as politicians to do more. Like other parties, Scottish Labour supports the aims and objectives of Eating Disorder Awareness Week 2026. This year, with particular focus on community, as we've heard from other speakers. This year, the theme of Eating Disorders Week, community, is just such an important point, I think, to make. Tonight, we've heard from other members, at least 100,000 people in Scotland are living with an eating disorder, with hundreds and thousands more impacted as relatives, friends and colleagues. But despite the number of people affected, we know many people, both those personally living with an eating disorder, but of course also those family members and friends trying to support a loved one with an eating disorder, will feel like they're facing the illness alone. Eating disorders, as the member said, can be deeply isolating, it can be frightening and it can be difficult to reach out for support. We hear this repeatedly from those recovering and from their families. Some of the hardest times are before one realises there are other people who have had similar experiences, or there are other people to reach out to who care and have the skills to help. It often feels so lonely, so we need this community approach at so many different points of this journey. On researching for today's debate, I was pleased to see the Beats online page talk about celebrating the power of community and the real important role families, friends and other support networks play in helping someone feel supported, understood and never alone on their journey right from the start of seeking help, during treatment and then beyond. A community in this sense can and will extend right through the journey. In my work before this place, I did have some time that I worked in this particular field, and the importance of the wider family, friends and community in supporting people, I feel, cannot be underplayed. Recovery is always best when we have others around us, and often that ability to be part of a team together is not valued enough. When I say a team, I really mean that being together whenever that, wherever that is, whether that's our close family or our close friends or an official care team, or indeed people who may not know much but reach out to us, such as a local charity or a community group, or even the kindness of strangers sometimes can make a difference. So I find this year's focus on community to be really very important, and I really want to amplify Elena Witham, the member who's brought the debate to the Chamber, to say that we as politicians should be part of that community as well, and it's really important that we do our bit as legislators and policymakers to support this. Beats that I found when I was looking through some information are talking about that really widest community possible, the role of online communities as well. And I think it's really important that we highlight that importance of going and making sure that there's community there for people. I want to, like others, acknowledge the comprehensive recommendations set out in the 2021 National Review of Eating Disorder Services, and I accept there's been a lot of work done and undertaken by government and organisations such as Beats. However, I agree that we do need to make sure we continue to advance and at some pace. I would like to particularly raise community services, local services for people to access. I had a meeting with Beats in my office where they really explained to me that there is the report No Place Like Home shows that there's urgent need to expand access to intensive community and day treatments so that these are available to people of all ages across the UK, and they provide intensive community and day treatments so that people can be seen frequently, which is different perhaps to the models that we have where people are perhaps just seen weekly. They also commented about the importance of recovery within your community, things like eating out, that sort of thing can be done better by these kinds of networks and services. So given the pressures of time tonight, I will stop there, but I am really looking forward to the Minister's response to this, and I've really enjoyed the debate this evening. Thank you, Presiding Officer.
Thank you, Ms Malkin. And I call Kevin Stewart.
Thank you very much, Presiding Officer, and I pay tribute to my friend Elena Whittam for securing tonight's debate. It has become an annual event in this Parliament to have a debate in Eating Disorders Week, and I think we've got to recognise that Dennis Robertson was the person who really started all of this off and educated many of us about eating disorders after the death of his greatly loved daughter, Caroline. And it seems today that during the course of this debate, it's many of the same voices that are taking part in proceedings this evening. The Minister, as he moved to the front, I said to him, I hope to hear your contribution tonight. And he said to me, I'm surprised that you have got any more questions to ask. Because as Alex from Beat will know, one of the things that I have done as I am about to depart this place is to try and deal with things which I think are unfinished business that need to continue on. And I make no apology, and I know the Minister wouldn't want one, for actually submitting as many questions that I have in recent weeks about eating disorders, and I thank him for his answers. And I'm going to concentrate some of tonight's speech on some of the questions that I've asked, some of the answers that I've got, and where I think we need to go from there. But let me say that, like everyone else, I believe that eating disorders are isolating illnesses. They do thrive in secrecy and often separate individuals from their support networks. And a huge amount of emphasis over the years have been on women and eating disorders. But for men, particularly young men, I think the isolation for them is often greater. And I think we cannot lose sight that eating disorders can affect anyone in our society. And we've heard today about 100,000 people in Scotland currently living with an eating disorder. And for every one of those individuals, finding a community, whether through peer support or accessible clinical pathways, is often a vital step towards recovery. Building a supportive community means removing the barriers that keep people isolated. And a critical part of this is ensuring that those who need help can reach out for it directly. Now, the National Specification for the Care and Treatment of Eating Disorders in Scotland sets out a clear expectation. Pathways and processes must be developed in partnership with people with lived experience to ensure that care is accessible. However, as we have also heard, Different services are available in different parts of the country, and some can access quite easily, others no. And we need to ensure that we learn from the best practice, learn from the voices of lived experience, in order to get all of this right. We must ensure that no one is excluded. And there is good work going on out there, but sometimes we still don't collect the right data to ensure that we are providing the right services. So with that in mind, we need a clearer picture of service provision across the country. Currently, specific data in both CAM self-referrals and the implementation of the Peace Pathway is not routinely collected. And I welcome that the Scottish Government is taking steps to change this. However, collecting the data must be just the first step, and this data must be used to identify NHS boards that are falling below best practice, and it must focus support in getting them up to standard for the good of all of the people of this country. Presiding Officer, by listening to people with lived experience and ensuring that services are accessible to all, we can break the cycle of isolation, and I support the motion and the vital work being done to ensure that no one in Scotland has to face an eating disorder alone. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr Stewart. And I now call on Minister Tom Arthur to respond to the debate. Up to 7 minutes, please.
Thank you, Presiding Officer, and let me begin by saying I am extremely grateful to Elena Whittam for lodging today's motion and enabling this debate to mark Eating Disorder Awareness Week. I would also want to put on record my gratitude for the contributions from Emma Harper, Maurice Golden, Carol Mockin and Kevin Stewart. And let me pay particular tribute to Mr Stewart for his outstanding work in this area and his leadership and drive when he held this portfolio that I am currently honoured to hold, and to recognise his ongoing commitment, as he touched upon in his speech. It has been for many years the same voices, and these voices, I want to assure the Chamber, are being heard. And as we have heard today, this year's theme focuses on community, and we welcome the opportunity to celebrate the strength of community and the important role that families, friends and wider support networks play in helping someone feel supported through their journey, from seeking help, undergoing treatment and beyond. I would also like to express my sincere thanks to those across Scotland who work each day to support the recovery of those with eating disorders and their families. I would want to extend that thanks as well to those who are attending in the gallery this evening. And I want to provide assurance to Elena Whittam and to members across the Chamber this evening that this Government remains committed to improving eating disorder services in Scotland. We are working closely with NHS boards and third sector organisations such as BEAT, the UK's largest eating disorder charity, to ensure that those who require support for an eating disorder have access to the right care and treatment. During the last 5 years, we have made meaningful progress to ensure timely and appropriate treatment for those impacted by an eating disorder. There is support across Scotland for children, young people, adults, families and carers. We continue to provide funding to NHS services and to the third sector, as well as working with people with lived experience, which, as Mr Stewart highlighted, is of so much importance. Since the COVID-19 pandemic, we have funded BEAT to deliver a wide range of services, including direct support, carer programmes, professional training, advocacy and digital learning platforms. This financial year alone, we have provided over £600,000 to BEAT, which includes funding to BEAT's Lived Experience panel. This is a vital platform that helps ensure eating disorder policy and services are truly fit for purpose. The panel has played a crucial role in driving forward the recommendations from the National Review of Eating Disorder Services. Since the publication of the review, we have made real progress in delivering the short-term recommendations, with significant work underway to deliver the remaining medium and long-term recommendations. The national specification for the care and treatment of eating disorder services was published, as we have heard, in November 2024. providing a clear framework to support both the NHS and community services in delivering high-quality, person-centred, safe and effective care for children, young people and adults. Recent self-assessment tools completed by boards highlight encouraging progress and innovative approaches, giving us a clearer picture of how implementation of the specification is developing across Scotland. We continue to support NHS boards to implement the specification through the National Eating Disorders Network. The network was established in 2024 to progress medium and long-term recommendations from the National Review. Through Scottish Government funding, the network has also supported the development of public-facing resources, including content pages and videos featuring people with lived experience, clinicians and parents and carers. The majority of these are now available on NHS Inform, with work ongoing to finalise a digital page to support positive body image and a self-help guide for binge eating behaviours. Over the last few months, the eating disorder pages have collectively been viewed over 23,000 times. By enhancing access to high-quality information, we are enabling individuals and communities to make informed choices on their path to recovery. I'll take the intervention from Mr Stewart.
I thank the Minister for taking the intervention, and I really would pay tribute to the work that has gone on in developing some of these online resources. But sometimes we don't get those messages out there. I wonder if tonight, during the course of this week, the Minister could send all of those links to every single member in this place, but also try and ensure that those links are circulated wider in the community, so that we can up the level of folk who are accessing these pages, which I agree are valuable.
Minister.
I think Mr Stewart makes a very constructive and helpful suggestion, and one I'm happy to commit to taking forward. I think implicit in that point is a recognition of, well, it is one thing to have excellent resources and to acknowledge that they are being utilised, but it is another to ensure that we are maximising the use of them so that everyone who can benefit from them truly has the opportunity to do so. Presiding Officer, strengthening eating disorder training for health and social care professionals is also a priority, ensuring they can recognise early signs of eating disorders and understand the complexity of these conditions. The Scottish Government has been working with NHS Education for Scotland to enhance and expand eating disorder guidance, training and evidence-based resources available on tourists. Work is progressing to produce primary care training videos focusing on recognising and communicating physical risk. We have sought input from Beats Lived Experience panel to ensure the content is realistic and sensitive. Scottish Government funding to Beat also supports training to build further understanding of eating disorders, whether it be a clinician, educator, healthcare professional, academic or people out in the community providing support. Finally, I would like to highlight some of our wider efforts to improve support. Over the last 2 years, we have provided just over £4.5 million across the west, east and north of Scotland to support development of regional elements of the CAMS service specification. That work is helping strengthen pathways, workforce capacity and alternatives to inpatient care. In the north of Scotland, this includes progression of intensive home treatment programmes. This focuses on strengthening home-based alternatives to hospital admissions, improving coordination across boards and ensuring young people who can be safely supported at home are able to access timely specialist care within their own communities. These will be vital additions to Scotland's children and young people's mental health services. And they sit alongside the vital work that third sector organisations like Beat do to support those with eating disorders, work which we are proud to support. I would like to take this opportunity to encourage anyone who may need support for an eating disorder to speak with their GP and make use of the resources that I have highlighted today and will endeavour to circulate to all members of this Parliament so that we can ensure as many people as possible can access the right support as soon as possible. Presiding Officer, I will close by again thanking Elena Whittam for lodging the motion for this debate, and indeed to all members for their contribution. Of course, I very much recognise that we still have work to do to deliver on recommendations from the National Review. However, I want to ensure all those in this chamber and those listening that improving support for those with an eating disorder is a top priority both for myself and this government.
Thank you, Minister. That concludes the debate, and I close this meeting.